They lose on Russia, could have won on China, but got killed on China because they conceded Russia and let the negative team, very good debaters, beat them up on the China advantage. So the idea is make your case matter and don't give up on it too quickly. If you have an affirmative that has multiple advantages, stick with them as long as you can, because you never know what's going to win you the debate. Make your 1AC matter. The other thing is backup evidence. It's not enough to have the front line of a 1AC. Have even better evidence to read in the 2AC. Have your best evidence to read in the 1AR. That's what locks down case. If you have evidence coming out of the 1AR that's pretty darn good on case, the 2N is at a huge disadvantage. Again, write this down. Big font, big letters. Winning debates is not about what you say as much as when you say it. Be strategic to use your 1AC. Disadvantages. Disadvantages is all about the law of unintended consequences. The plan wants to do this, but oh my God, that's going to happen. The law of unintended consequences meets the world at the juncture of no one would ever want your plan, because even if you accomplish what you say you accomplish in the 1AC, an external effect is going to happen, which is going to cause problems. Unintended consequences or disadvantages. Affirmative teams don't see them. They really haven't considered it. If you're good at it, consider them. It's what's going to happen besides the case that's going to happen. It's the reason why Congress hasn't done this already. Something bad will follow if X, Y, or Z is done. Good negative teams have case-specific disadvantages. You don't want the plan to happen, because bad things that are more harmful than the case are likely to occur. You have to consider the disadvantages before you consider the case harms. Why? Because the disadvantages will happen sooner. Because the disadvantages are more likely to happen than planned solvency, meaning higher probability. Or because the disadvantages have a bigger impact. More people will suffer and die. And finally, you want to vote negative on disadvantages. Disadvantages are best when they include an external impact, meaning something big beyond the case, but also if they turn the case or if they prevent case solvency. How can we improve education if we have no plan? How can we improve education if Russia bombs Washington, D.C.? We can't. There is no education. So look for disabs that either turn or prevent solvency, and look for disabs that are bigger in impact, that are faster, or that are more likely to occur, more high probability than the case impact. When you teach debate to younger people, go through the elements of a disadvantage so that they know it. These are the elements of a disadvantage. A disadvantage must be unique. Uniqueness means that something is happening now or something is not happening now. If something is happening now, the plan stops it from happening. If something is not happening now, the plan makes it happen. The link. This is what happens if what is not happening now happens. It links to a problem. This is what happens if something that is happening now stops happening. It links to a problem. Third element, internal links. The problem that is linked to creates something bad. And the something bad results in the big boom. That's a disadvantage. When you teach people, reduce the education to the steps that are required for the elements of the argument. The elements of the argument of a disadvantage: uniqueness, links, internal links and impact. Now, impact just isn't about how many people die. Impact is really three things. Impact is probability. Impact is time, which happens first. And impact is impact, how big it is. What's the significance? A disadvantage that happens after the case harms happen loses. A disadvantage that happens before the case harms are going to happen wins. If you are affirmative and need to answer a disadvantage, this is how it is done. Beat the uniqueness. Hi, what you say is happening is not true. It is not happening, and I have more recent and better evidence to prove that it is not happening. Hi, what you say is not happening is happening, and I have better and more recent evidence to prove that it is happening. If you win uniqueness, the disadvantage goes away because the plan doesn't cause a problem. The problem is happening. And the desirability of the plan remains with the case because the disad is not an external impact that is unique to the plan. A second way to attack a disadvantage is to beat or turn the links, or internal links. Be careful because you don't want to do both. You don't want to turn the links and beat the uniqueness. You then double turn yourself. You don't want to turn the link and turn the internal link, because then you double turn yourself. If you beat the link, you win the disadvantage, because the disad doesn't cause the link to the bigger problem. And finally, you want to beat or turn the impacts. Oh my gosh, this plan will cause global warming. Oh, no, 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 no. We're entering into an ice age. We need to make the planet as warm as possible. Warming is good. What, you work on Trump's campaign? What the hell? No, I mean, that's how it works. The idea is you have to think about how you answer the disadvantages. Counterplan. Who needs the plan? Oh my God, I love counterplan debates. Because counterplans put into context who's right and who's not right. In listening to David Strauss last night, I learned something. There's a reason why David Strauss won the NDT that even goes beyond having the best partner anybody could have wanted. David Strauss thinks about the strategy of debate. Those of you who are in his lab are lucky because he is a thinking teacher. And his explanation of comparison of plan versus counterplan to determine whether or not something is competitive struck home with me. He's right. If the counterplan achieves the plan and is the same thing, then PERM, do the counterplan, wins. Because both teams are advocating for the same thing, and the AF has a good idea. Do it. It's not a question of presumption. It's a question of the negative not clashing with the affirmative. David Strauss is brilliant. He's right. That's a brilliant thought, and that's how counterplans need to be done. Again, look to the 4 elements of a counterplan. There are 3 in high-level national debate circles. There are 4 in places like Kansas, Missouri, Minnesota, Oklahoma, places like in rural Illinois and California. A counterplan should have a text, just like a plan has a text. Write it out. Make sure that it's spelled correctly. Make sure that it's grammatically correct. Use that little thing you got on your computer that says spell check. Make sure it's right. Your plan text should be written out. Your plan text should be as accurate as the plan text. Your counterplan text has to be the same way. The second element of a counterplan is that it solves the case. That is what typically makes a counterplan competitive. We solve either all the case or one of the advantages. A counterplan text is good if it relates to the AF. My counterplan, first one I ever heard, first one I ever debated, first one anybody in my neighborhood ever heard, reinstitute institute prohibition might not have been competitive, but it was because it solved the same harm area as the app. And it created a net benefit that the app couldn't create. And it avoided a particularly unique harm that might have ruined the automobile industry and probably caused economic devastation. Okay, risk. Risk was there. The counterplan needs not only to solve the case, but also to create some type of net benefit. Now, the fourth element of the counterplan is very interesting, and it's very important in non-national tournament type stuff. In Kansas, in Southern California, with non-national judges, in Oklahoma, and places like that, your counterplan needs to not be topical. Those Kansas debaters are good and persuasive. They're very good. Well, if the counterplan is the same as the resolution, vote affirmative because you're voting for the resolution. There are 2 affirmative teams in the round. Vote affirmative. So, you've got to make sure that your counterplan in Kansas is not topical. Here's what the app does to respond. Now, this is what you teach people. Teach them step by step. See, they're not going to know anything. Don't dump all of this on them at once. Teach it over time. Explain it. See, I don't have to explain it to you because all of you who chose this institute are really the smartest person in the room. You know this stuff. All I'm doing is giving it to you in a format that you can give to someone else who doesn't know this stuff. And that's why this elementary stuff, I'm sorry to keep you awake so long, doesn't help make you a better debater, but it might help make you a better debate teacher. And remember, you've got a job to do. You're going to go back and your coach is going to make you teach the class. You use these PowerPoints in this session, and you say, this is how it works. You're teaching every element of debate. And you're teaching it in a format that novices can understand. Affirmative, respond to counterplans with theory. Your counterplan is topical. Your counterplan is conditional advocacy. It's terrible with conditional. Your counterplan is plan inclusive. You've stolen our idea. You're a cheater. It's ours. That's theory. Substance. Does the counterplan solve the case? Does the counterplan solve all the case? Is the part of the counterplan or the part of the case that the counterplan doesn't solve important? Is the part of the counterplan or the part of the case that the counterplan does not solve bigger than the net benefit of the counterplan? If it is, guess what? The app should win. This is how you debate counterplans from the affirmative. And finally, when you're asked, debate the net benefit. Either turn it or argue that there is insolvency from the counterplan to the net benefit. If the counterplan doesn't create the net benefit, if the counterplan doesn't link to the net benefit, PERM, do both, wins. Because there is no reason not to do the plan and the counterplan at the same time. And finally, PERMs. Never let a counterplan debate or critique debate go by without breathing the word PERM. It can be PERM to both, it can be PERM to lead. Just make sure that you get some permutation into the counterplan critique debate. And the reason is, it's offense against the counterplan. The PERM is offense against the critique. Offense, as we'll find out tomorrow, typically wins. Here's the math for those math scholars in here. Now, we already know that nobody can figure out what the difference is between 89.999 and 90. But here's the math. 1, the plan is good. 2, the counterplan and plan are better. Is 3 the best? Meaning do both and whatever the neg is saying? Because the neg may say a counterplan and a critique alternative. Always try to figure out how what they say works into what you can do. Critiques, same kind of lesson. Critiques are literature and philosophy meeting policy debate. This is the critique cocktail. Probably tells you what I think about critiques. Tyler, how many critiques did you argue in front of me?
There would be none.
Oh, yeah, Jesus, no wonder I liked him so much. All right, a critique is a bunch of big words. A critique is a foreign author, usually from Slovenia, France. Beware if they're from Russia, because you might get accused of collusion, so don't read Russian authors. The idea is you'll want to watch out for these foreign, smart-sounding words that all come together and mean bad things. I have never heard a critique that solves the case. Never once. Never once. Our alternative is to reject the plan as the instrumentality of government co-option. Okay, that means you don't solve the case because you don't get the plan. Our alternative is to reject the affirmative for their use of gendered language. Okay, so you don't adopt the plan, so you don't get the case. The critique never solves the case. Oh, the impact of our critique is error replication. Okay, let the error replicate after we've saved 100 million lives. Thank you very much, vote affirmative. Next debate, we'll all die. I don't care about next debate. I won this one because I solved 100 million lives first. Anyway, that's the critique. Here are the elements of the critique. Now, I ridiculed them, I think maybe once in, what, 17 years, 15 years? I think once I voted on a critique. Negative. Yeah, the AF kind of sat down. The K. They will read some long thing from some Czechoslovakian or Romanian author. That's our critique. Here are links. We have a million links. They said this. Oh, they said that. Oh, their author says this. Oh, they want to do that. Oh, it securitizes the... Oh, my God. Those are the links. Here are the implications of our critique. Okay. Yeah. It terms the case. Well, congratulations. Sometimes it does. Oh, and here's our alternative. Oh, don't, please. You wonder why Will Repko invited me. All right. Here's what the app has to think about. The app has to think about this. Always remember the perm. The perm is very simple, and the way I explain it or try to explain it is to say that the plan, looked at in a vacuum, does something good. You can do the plan with its good and then do the critique alternative. It doesn't matter. The alternative or the critique is not an opportunity cost of the plan. And plan action matters. And tomorrow, at the end of the second hour, that's when the greatest card ever written will come to the fore. I guarantee you, you will not find a single author, not one, nobody, not even people that are nutty to believe that lizard people are running the United Nations. Not even the smartest man in the world, that guy. Not even somebody who believes that time consists of 4 elements and oh God. Nobody has ever said that adopting a critique prevented nuclear war. Somebody very qualified, however, who was there, said that policy debate and the lessons learned from policy debate prevented nuclear war. So, always remember the perm. Yes, you have a question?
I'm wondering what your views are on critical apps.
They're okay. Yeah, go ahead. Run them, read them. I think I thought about voting once on a critical app. And then I realized, nah. I would even vote on topicality before Actually, Casey, you saw my record at the NDT, right? All right. You think I voted out on any of the critical apps that I saw? No, definitely not critical. Yeah, the feminists, Misty Tippett from Weber State, I voted out for her app. She won the debate.
West Georgia MJ.
Oh, West Georgia MJ, give back the land. I voted affirmative on that. And I voted for them over Northwestern, right? Was that?
Oh,
yeah, Mr. Callahan, who gave me rides at the Northwestern tournament, and I dropped him to give back the land. Okay. So here's the deal. Will I vote for a critical app? Look, the team that wins the debate wins my ballot. It isn't about what arguments they run. It isn't about what arguments they don't run. It's about how well they do.
Why don't you like the teams?
Oh, I like them. They're great.
What?
They're wonderful.
Spent 10 minutes completely bashing.
No, I didn't bash critiques. I just told you what critiques do and don't do. Critiques don't do anything. All right. Next issue. Solvency. In a critique debate, debate solvency. There is no critique alternative that would ever solve the case. It may prevent error replication, it may do other things, but it doesn't solve the case. But you got to think about that and explain it. And finally, understand framing and framework. I'm not going to talk about framework. The debater, I would say, that best knows framework in the whole planet is Michael Wimsatt. Michael loved debating framework. And was very, very good at it. It was his best defense to everything from performance to identity to everything else. And I don't know enough about framework. I sit there and listen to it, and it's like, blah, 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 just like top down. Anyway, learn how to beat critiques. Perms are always available. Perms should always be debated. Perms are always useful against the critique. Debate solvency. Find out whether or not the critique solves anything, and if it does, great, but it never will. There is no evidence that will ever say any critique solves the case. Solvency deficits to alternatives abound, and the implications of the critique never happen. People have been doing this stuff for the 30 years since Foucault was alive and wasn't dead. Well, he was dead before he was alive. They've been doing all these things, and the world has never ended. So that's what the K implications are. But your job is to provide a framework for the judge to show how judges should judge the debate and how the debaters should debate the debate. And you need to have your blocks. And trust me, the people here at this institute, the lab instructors that you have, are also brilliant framework debaters. Ask Margaret Strong how to debate framework. Ask Tyler Thurr how to debate framework. Ask David Strauss how to debate framework. Ask Casey how to debate framework. Ask Will Repko how to debate framework. I've only known Will Repko to be wrong once. And that's the semifinal of the national debate. All right. Theory. Theory is everywhere. It can be put on every argument in every debate. The common types of theory arguments are the specs. A spec, O spec, F spec, all the spec. Oh, God. On the affirmative, you can argue conditionality bad. You can argue performative contradiction. Oh, the affirmative securitizes the debate. Oh my God, securitization is so bad. Well, now let me read you my politics disadvantage. You vote affirmative and the world will end because we're going to engage in Russian nuclear war. All right, that's a performative contradiction. Shut up. Either securitization matters or nuclear war matters. They both can't matter to vote for a negative team. Theory is offense back against theory arguments. You need to have responses that include both defense and offense back against theory arguments to scare the other team away from the theory debate. On the neg side, typically theory arguments are severance. Some plan-related theory arguments, like your plan text is written wrong, you spelled united wrong, you spelled states wrong, you spelled federal with a capital F. Oh my God. Plan-related, T-related theory arguments abound as well, and there you talk about, if you ever get a chance to listen to Margaret, she talks about mixing burdens. She does it much better than I ever could. And perm-related theory. Too many permutations are bad. Too many permutations are not good. Permutations are evil. All kinds of theory arguments, and there's lots of them. These, for your teaching mechanisms, are for young students. An event happens. Something happens. The affirmative team was born! My God, it's a critique! It's unfair that they were born! Oh God, they were born! They can't get out of it! We win! It's unfair. The impact. Because they were born, structural violence is happening everywhere! And I'm gonna cry! And finally, it's a vote for us, but it's more important than anything else. Theory is put on every argument and every thing. Here's how you defeat the theory demon. Answer it. Just answer it. To drop theory is to die, and ink on paper wins. How do you avoid dropping it? The two of you communicate. You play in your mind in the 1AR and the 1NR. You two talk to each other. And you ask two questions. Question one, what will lose us the debate? And you answer it. And you agree, something will lose you the debate. It has to be answered by the 1NR or the 1AR. And number two, what will win us the debate? And that's what you want to extend. Make certain that you answer it, because ink on paper wins, and to drop is to die. To beat theory arguments, you need to hear them. You need to understand them. You need to flow it, and if you're not certain about what was said, write this question down. Are there any theoretical reasons to reject the app? Are there any theoretical reasons to reject the neg? Depending on whether you're app or neg, you ask that question. You need to know what the theoretical reasons are to reject you. And because you don't pay attention all the time, or your partner doesn't, you need to find out what they are, and you ask about them in cross-X. And you find out what they are, and you make sure you answer them. Theory is easy. You know what all the theory arguments are. There's the specs, there's the Hondo. Block it out now. And you always have offense or defense, and usually both, to any theory argument that is run against you. Look, everything is debatable. Everything. Critiques, topicality, they're all debatable. I voted on all of those things. I took a shower twice after the NDT because I voted on topicality twice. And you can't believe, I even used the rough side of the sponge to wipe that decision off. You have to listen. You have to hear the points, and you have to understand what they're saying. You also have to respond. Don't leave things in a vacuum. Answering arguments works. You have to make presentations. You have to make your case, and it's very important to tell why you win. Let me put it to you this way about debate. I'm going to talk about being nice tomorrow. But I'm going to finish up. I'll be here to answer your questions afterwards. But I'm going to tell you what I think of debate. Mr. Lawson stuck around because he really wanted to hear what I think about how debate works. Tyler stuck around because he still doesn't understand how debate works. Casey is here because he knows how debate works. He just wants to make sure that I don't get invited next year. I don't know how to do it. Here's how debate works. The best way to make an argument is to use the other team's argument against them. Your research assignment, because I'm here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, to tell you how to win a debate. See, we talked about winning big rounds today. We talked about how to be a winning debater today. Tomorrow, I tell you how to win a debate round. And that's different than anything else. And finally, I tell you about how to use debate. Here's some research assignments. Who is the debater who saved the United States economy? We'll ask that question tomorrow. Who is the debater who prevented the conviction of the impeachment of a president of the United States? Who are the debaters? You want to listen? This is an assignment. Who are the debaters who decided and argued the case of who should be president of the United States in the year 2000? Who are the debaters who are on the United States Supreme Court? Who is the debater that prevented President Trump's immigration ban from going into effect in Washington? Not who's the debater that argued the case, but who's the debater that prevented it from going into effect in Washington? Those kind of questions will be asked tomorrow. I will be here so that you all can get back. If you have questions tonight, I'll be here to answer them. You've all been very, very good. And I can tell that you'll never, never become public forum, congressional, or legislative.